Hey everyone, Edward Jimenez here again, your attorney, to continue discussing your insurance policy with you, hopefully to give you a better understanding of what your coverages are as we really get into the height of hurricane season. Today's video is intended to give you some tips, tricks on, I think, some buried concepts within your insurance policy that are very helpful and very important to understand what your coverages are. Particularly, these will apply to water-related events and specifically hurricanes as well. So, what I've done is take a few excerpts out of the insurance policy that we've been looking at, this basic citizens policy, to show you some language that's really buried in there, but has a huge effect on how your insurance company interprets your claim and ultimately how it delivers coverage and potential payment to you. So let's look at a few of these things. And we're going to start with um, looking at the Section 1 perils insured against that we've looked at in a prior video. Again, if you remember, this is where I told you your all risk language may be located, and your insurance company, if you have an all risk policy, begins to describe for you what is not covered by your insurance policy. Now, something that's becoming more and more common, and this is the intention of this first concept of three I'll be talking to you about, is more commonly insurance companies are including this highlighted language within their policies to continue to cut out basic coverage from your policy. And again, it fills into this concept I've been describing where the all risk policy is not about what it covers, but really what it doesn't cover. And the insurance company has the ability to keep cutting out more and more coverages, which is what they have been doing for years now. But again, if you're within this perils insured against section and this citizens policy, this language, you can probably find this in your policy at home. Other policies that have similar, maybe not identical language may be included in other portions, but basically here it is. So the insurance company is saying, remember, again, this is within the exclusions part of this. We do not cover for rain, snow, sleet, sand, or dust to the interior of a building unless a covered peril first damages the building, causing an opening in a roof or wall, and the rain, snow, sleet, sand, or dust enters through this opening. All right, so that's a mouthful, obviously, but what's important here, if you're looking at this from a hurricane perspective, is this first concept or first word, I should say, of rain. And now, for the interior of a building, unless your building gets completely ripped off of the foundation, the damage you're going to most commonly see to the interior is rainwater getting in through damage that's caused to the exterior from wind. Wind causes damage to a roof, let's say, part of the roof blows away, now you have an opening and water gets in. And that's essentially what this insurance company is saying. They are not going to cover rain to the interior of your building unless it is demonstrated that the exterior sustained damage in the form of an opening, and that rainwater that damaged the inside, even if they admit that there's rainwater damage to the inside, they have to find that it entered through the opening that was caused by the hurricane, and then, only then, that rainwater damage is covered. Now, this may seem basic enough, but maybe for some of my former clients watching this, you know about this and how this can be applied and how stringently the insurance company is going to apply this and use this to their advantage. Because oftentimes, sadly, a lot of the hurricane damage is not necessarily so blatant, especially if you're more inland, you're not getting the worst of this. And maybe the damage is not obvious to the naked eye, but there is damage to a roof. And there's, let's say, an opening that's caused even the size of a pinhole, and that water is starting to get in there. The insurance company can go up on your roof and say, well, we don't see any openings. And maybe not surprisingly, they'll define that term opening in many different ways, depending who you're talking to and on what day. And therefore, there's no coverage for your interior rainwater damage. So that's the kind of twisting of this wording that can be utilized against you. So it's important to know if you have this language in your policy, and important to make sure that you're, I guess, situating yourself correctly to deliver your claim to the insurance company by demonstrating these openings if necessary, if they come and try to deny your claim for no openings. And some insurance policies don't have this language. And so like the flip side of this would be, even if there is no opening admitted by the insurance company, the rainwater would still be covered on the interior, but it's very rare nowadays anyway that insurance companies have that language. This I am finding is over 50% the language you're going to find in a typical residential property insurance policy. So that's one important nuance clause that I wanted to show you. The next one, actually in the same policy, is in the same exact section. So again, we're in section one, perils insured against, and we're under this part two, again, just like the opening language where it's telling you we do not insure, however, for the following losses. And if you go down, it's the neighbor to the one I just showed you. It's this next number nine is really this part right here is important to understand. Now, what the insurance company is saying is if any of these things cause damage, it's not covered. So again, we're in the exclusion part of this section one. And so it includes things like wear and tear, long-term deterioration, inherent vice or latent defect or defective materials, let's say. So let's say you have a faulty product in the form of a plumbing line that's installed, and it has a defect that's not discovered until later. This would be a time when the exclusion could apply, for example. But what's important and what I want to bring to your attention is actually this part right here, which is, or let's say, can be referred to as an ensuing loss provision. So here's what it says. If any of these in 2B9, which is this right here, this is the 9 that's referenced above, cause water damage not otherwise excluded or limited elsewhere in the policy from a plumbing, heating, air conditioning, or automatic fire protective sprinkler system or household appliance, we cover loss subject to a $10,000 limit caused by the water, including the cost to tear out and repair only that part of the or portion of the building necessary to access the system or appliance. So this policy actually has an additional sublimit of $10,000 on this particular coverage, which is very restrictive. Other insurance companies are adopting this similar kind of restrictive coverage, but that's really besides the point here. Point is, an interesting way to demonstrate this concept of how an exclusion applies and how some coverage can actually be provided back to you is, strictly speaking, you have an excluded loss if you have, let's say, a plumbing line that fails due to wear and tear deterioration, as they often do after many decades of use. So if you have an older home, this has probably happened to you at least a few times, or maybe to the prior owners. So that triggering event, the peril, is a deteriorated plumbing line. However, and so let's say that would mean your loss is excluded. However, you have this additional clause in your policy that says if any of these things do cause water damage, then we'll cover up to $10,000 of water damage. So if this did not exist, if this was just removed from your policy and you had a damage due to water from a deteriorated plumbing line, you'd have no coverage. It's this section only that provides that coverage to you. So these are the little concepts that are important to understand and where you can find coverage. And believe it or not, I've seen insurance companies miss this before, where they'll deny this claim and not pay attention to this ensuing loss provision. So that can happen. Now, the final thing that I wanted to demonstrate for you is this, I believe, very, very important concept, particularly for an all-risk policy, in the form of how to interpret the exclusion section of your policy, which we looked at in a prior video. And this is a very intricate concept, but it comes down to these following words right here. So the first words under your exclusion, most of the time, most insurance policies will say this, says, we do not insure for loss caused directly or indirectly, that's key, by any of the following. Such loss is, this is the additional key, excluded regardless of any other cause or event contributing concurrently or in any sequence to the loss. This is extremely important language. What this is saying is, if any of these things occur at your property and cause damage, then any subsequent losses that you suffer as a result are 100% excluded. Doesn't matter if it occurred first in a series of 5 things, it occurred third or fifth, or if it occurred 10% as opposed to 90%. As long as it occurs at all, anything that it contributed to, that is completely excluded from coverage in your policy. And so the common one that's very important, since we're talking about this in the context of hurricanes, is water damage in the form of flood or other rising waters. So this being a typical wind policy as opposed to a flood policy, this is how the insurance company is protecting themselves from giving you coverage on a flood. They are saying to the extent that water damage in the form of flood causes any damage to any portion of your property, that property that it damaged is 100% excluded from coverage. Now, to fully demonstrate this for you, as I've said, in this policy, there is rainwater coverage if an opening is caused in the exterior. So let's say hypothetically you have a hurricane and a flood both impacting your property, which happens obviously very frequently because a hurricane has to hit the coast at some point, causing the tidal waters to rise. So if you have a seafront property, you're going to get damaged not only by flood, but also by wind, storm, and rainwater. What this policy is saying is, let's say you have flood water come in first and starts damaging your flooring. It gets through the sliding glass or something like that, starts damaging your flooring, but then the water recedes, and then the next day, from how much rainwater damaged your roof and the wind, that rainwater eventually makes its way down to the floor and causes more damage to your floor. Doesn't matter under this policy, because the flood was there at all. It doesn't matter if it was first in time or second in time or contributed even a small portion, because it contributed at all to this event. Going back to that language I had highlighted on the screen earlier, regardless of any other cause or event contributing concurrently, that's completely excluded. Okay, so that's the concept that's important in this policy and frequently other policies. And so if you have any of these other things in there, like a neglect to preserve property, as I showed in a prior video, war, existing damage, which sometimes insurance companies try to employ that incorrectly and try to pass that through people that don't understand. But this would be things that happen before the policy is incepted, or other kind of losses you see in here. These would be fully excluded. Now, the last little bit of kind of a caveat to this, and maybe some nuance, is there's another part within the exclusions under Part B, typically, which says something slightly different. Although it's within your exclusions, it doesn't have this, what's commonly referred to as anti-concurrent language. This concurrent language that's here doesn't say that. So if you're looking at your policy and you make it this far, just know that under this additional part, because it doesn't say if any of these things occur irrespective of sequence, then the following bold numbered points here, 1, 2, 3, and so forth, these don't have that same effect. So that's important to know, because this is also a very common application that we see. Some form of a faulty installation or construction potentially does not exclude your loss completely. So that's important to understand that as well. So all of those things are really important for interpreting any form of claim that you have under these policies. And believe it or not, especially on hurricanes, one of those three things, if not multiple, are going to be applied pretty much in every single claim. So it's important you understand those things as well. I hope that's helpful. If you have any additional clarification you'd like on those points, please, again, as always, drop me a question and I'm happy to answer. Hope you enjoyed this video.